What's up, guys? What the hell is this? And now for something completely different. I don't know how many of you guys would recognize that reference. That's a Monty Python reference from Monty Python's Flying Circus, which was a show that was very popular in the 1970s and 80s that I used to watch as a kid. It is awesome. Go check it out. The humor is still incredibly funny and topical and absurdist, even in modern day. Brilliant satirist, absurdist humor that was done 50 years ago by extremely brilliant people. In front of you, it's not Magic. It's freaking Hearthstone. I'm going to just storytell a little bit really quickly about my history with this game. And I also want to introduce my darling boy, my son Desmond. He is say hi, Desi.
Hi.
Desi is 13 and 9 months old, and he has been in the background of my gaming life his entire life. And at 13, he is morphing rapidly into an extremely elite gamer. He's already way better than me at lots of games. And I can just see the way that he moves and thinks when he plays MMOs. He's playing this thing called Skyblock / Hypixel, I guess, which is essentially like an MMO, a World of Warcraft style MMO, but created in Minecraft. And it's kind of like a pay-to-win server, right?
I'm free to play though, but yeah.
Free to play, yeah. You might want to speak up a little bit. The mic's strong, but if you're a little louder.
I mean, I'm free to play, but
yeah, you play it as free to play, but it is a
most
pay-to-win
people spend
server. A lot of people spend money, and of course, you're able to excel at the game without doing that because you're patient and calculating and strategizing. And he spends a lot of time actually arbitraging the auction house, which is a really good way to progress in these games. It's actually a really good way to progress in life, it turns out, too. It's just easier to do in a game when you're 13. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about that. I've been playing Hearthstone since it came out, actually. It came out, I think, in beta more than 10 years ago. I think 2011 or 2012. And I gave it a try, of course. It was designed by some close friends of mine. In fact, Mike Donay, who I knew in the early Magic years. He was part of one half of the Donay brothers, him and Jeff Donay. And they were these badass Canadian Magic players that I met when I first started playing professionally in '96. And they had heard about me, and we were sort of friends, although we never really knew each other well. And after leaving, or after kind of moving on professionally, both of the Donay brothers found themselves working within the gaming industry based in California, working for different TCG game companies like Upper Deck, I think, also working for Blizzard Entertainment. And Mike Donay worked for a really long time, actually, as a guy who made Magic cards. He was one of the main people in R&D for at least 10 years, I think, maybe even longer. And when I used to go to Magic R&D, I would hang out there. I wouldn't spend a lot of time in the pit, but I did see it a number of times. And every time I went over there to meet with people or talk with people or do some play testing or whatever, when I was asked to go and do that stuff, I'd always see Mike Donay there. So he was around. And then I was surprised to find that Mike Donay had transferred to Blizzard Entertainment, where he was a design guy for Hearthstone at the very beginning, back when the game was in early beta, essentially. You could play it online, but it was in beta. And I played early Hearthstone a fair amount. I played kind of a mixture of arena and constructed, and it always felt incredibly remedial to me. I enjoyed the games. They felt like I was playing a TCG, but the game was so simple. It was so simple that it just felt like a bad version of Magic. Like it felt a lot worse than even Portal, mainly because of the fact that you have no interaction with the other person on their team, and there's no such thing as color fixing, and there's no such thing as dealing with the RNG of the mana base, which is one of the most interesting and skill testing things that exists in Magic. But Hearthstone had solved this problem in a really novel way, because the fundamental randomness that makes Magic interesting and good for people who aren't amazing at it is the fact that you always have hope. Whether you're an expert player or whether or not you're a beginner playing against that expert, you always have at least a small chance that that guy might get mana screwed, or he might get mana flooded and you might win anyway. And that is an extremely part of what makes Magic special and compelling. And all the other TCGs that have come down the pike for years and years trying to solve this problem have failed because they've tried to remove the randomness of the mana base from the game. And when you do that, it makes the game too deterministic, and the good players always win, and the bad players don't like it. And when bad players don't like the game and they have no hope, they don't play it, they quit, and the game fails. And it's happened over and over again for 30 years since Magic came out. Until Hearthstone, they fixed it. What they realized is that there was another way to put the randomness into the game that was fun and cool and interesting for both players. It was still very skill testing, but it gave the worst player hope, and that was the mechanic called Discover. Discover was like the start of this randomness thing that they introduced into Hearthstone. And when they did that, and they made lots of other cards have random effects, Discover's a really, really probably the best random mechanic. The other ones before then felt a little bit more capricious. They were more kind of like, I play the guy and it splatters random damage all over the board, like Mad Bomber. And sometimes it works out in my favor, and sometimes it fucking screws me because the thing like kills my other creature, or it does 3 damage to my own face. There was randomness like that in the game to offset the fact that the mana base in this game is deterministic. You do not draw lands. They just, essentially every turn you draw an extra card and put it into play, and it's a land. And that progresses until you get up to 10 mana, unless you have some mechanics that alter that. But either way, Hearthstone solved randomness in the mana system while getting rid of the mana system entirely, essentially, and rolling all that randomness into the cards themselves. And that was the solution that made this game special. That's why really the 2 biggest TCGs in the world are Hearthstone and Magic. It's 100% that reason, because of how you design games properly. And the guys that were making Hearthstone were guys who made Magic, so of course they understood that. And they understood that you needed that randomness and that sense of hope. But when I played this game, I did not feel like I had enough agency in it as a player compared to Magic. It just felt, because it was so, the randomness was like totally random. There was too many things that were deterministic, and there weren't that many ways to actually leverage your skill over your opponent. And the games really kind of just felt like it was my cards versus your cards, and you kind of just did really obvious and stupid things over and over and over again. And I did not enjoy it after a while. The plays were too obvious once I started to learn the strategy. And compared to Magic, it was just way too simple. Way too simple, and it never captivated me. So I played Magic Online. I played a bunch of auto battlers. Battlegrounds came out back in 2019. I played the shit out of that. So did Desi, actually. Desi, talk about Battlegrounds for a second, because I've been monologuing.
Oh yeah, no, I played Battlegrounds quite a bit. For 2019, it was in a very remedial stage, and it was pretty simplistic, but I still played quite a bit. I would wake up like every morning and play like an
And you were
hour or
9
so.
at the time.
And I was 9 years old,
Yeah.
so it shows how pretty simple it was. Over time, it's gotten a lot more complicated, and there's been a lot more new mechanics and everything. But I've had certain periods in time where, like in 2019, I was addicted to the game, and then I think in 2020, and then in 2021, I kind of laid off of it, and then 2022, I got back into it, and then recently, I haven't been playing it much.
Yeah. A good analysis, actually, definitely. And the fact that Battlegrounds has actually clearly come into its own as a game. It really feels like a fully fleshed out auto battler now, rather than what it originally was, which was a whole bunch of just generic Hearthstone assets that were cobbled into a game by Mike Donay, actually. Mike Donay moved eventually, I think, from the Hearthstone design team to the Battlegrounds team, and I think that's where he resides to this day. And although he may not be with the company anymore, actually, I think I learned a little while ago that he left the company, is no longer working at Blizzard. But at the beginning, Hearthstone Battlegrounds, if you enjoy that game, if you've played it, you have Mike Donay to thank. Mike Donay was the driving force, the lead. This will be Desi's informing us. You just say it.
What?
Just say it.
Why?
Just say what you wrote me. It's okay. We're recording.
No, I know. I think that we should probably just
Get to the
restart.
game?
Yeah, well...
No, I don't want to restart. This is an introductory video. We're just doing a little introduction, introducing you. It's just our banter. This is what we're going to try to do. Okay, so Desi's point is valid. I just want to say that I'm going to give recording some Hearthstone games a shot, actually, just as a change of pace. I feel like I'm a little tired of Commander, and it's a little played out. And to fast forward this whole story, moving away from Mike Donay and Battlegrounds and everything else, is that Hearthstone, I think, has matured a lot as a game. And when I play it now, it actually is pretty interesting. It no longer feels remedial to me. It does not feel anywhere near as complex as Magic. It's not even close. But I have found myself enjoying playing control decks in Hearthstone again. There's enough tools and different kind of ways to innovate that it started feeling interesting, even within the very remedial confines of the game, and the fact that there are no instants. There's no instants. There's no stack. None of that stuff exists at all. And consequently, there's no bluffing, really. And so you kind of just know what the guy's going to play. That's what it is. You just play games against your opponents, and after a little while, you kind of get a sense of everything that's likely to be coming. And you just start to play around those things. You expect the undead guy to eventually cast Marrowgraw, or whatever the fuck his name is. Or to cast, if they're playing the Plague deck, you have to think, do they have Helia this game? How do I have to pace the game if they've drawn Helia by turn 4 or not? And that all just comes from familiarity of understanding the meta. But the actual game itself is not very complicated at all. I'm sorry to say that to the amazing Hearthstone players out there, but as somebody who has spent their lifetime cultivating skill at TCGs, Hearthstone, very remedial even now compared to Magic, but much more interesting. And there's much more opportunity to leverage your skill as a player. So here we go. This is my deck, Control Warrior. This is a free-to-play account that barely has like any cards on it. I kind of just triangulated straight to this because I was enjoying playing this on my main account so much. I figured I'd make an alt with it too, and it didn't take very long to disenchant a few things and so on, open up a couple gold packs, and get enough dust to build it. And it is, fuck man, this deck's great. I'm just going to show it to you right now. Look, I'm doing a Hearthstone deck tech. What the hell is going on, man? What is this? Jesus Christ. All right, what's become of my brain? Whew. All right, first Hearthstone deck tech, Control Warrior. This is not my design, for one, but I can still talk about it. I just took it off the internet. I figured a pro would probably have a pretty good sense of what cards are good, and I agree. I think I've only changed one card in the entire time that I played this deck. He had some other random legendary in it that I didn't like, and I put a Rust-Rot Viper in, and then I think on my other version, I think I'm actually currently using, I'm trying out the guy that assembles the band, the 4-drop, that's kind of like a sideboard weird mechanic. And I haven't figured out if he's just better than the Viper. But you can put him in your deck, and then you've got him, and if you need the Viper, you can take the Viper out of him. And it's a little slow, and I put a Dirty Rat in there, because that seemed useful. I can't remember the third card I put in there. It might have been a Weapons Expert, yeah, which is what I cut. Anyway, you get the idea. The point is I really found Rust-Rot Viper to be excellent. There's a lot of people running Ignis, and if someone hits a 10 mana or like an early to mid-game Ignis and they have a 10-drop weapon in their hand, well, you're playing an incredibly slow control deck, which means you better have a fucking way to deal with that 10-drop weapon, because some of them are insane. Like the one that has Wind Fury summon 2 8/8s every turn, that's like completely unbelievably unbeatable most of the time, unless you are miles ahead. So if you don't have a Viper for their Ignis 10-drop, you can just lose a game that you're miles ahead in. The cost of a rotating tradable slot seems way worth it. So that's the one change that I think I made to the deck, at least in this version. I'm going to go through the cards real quick. 2 Shield Slam. Obviously, this is an armor deck, and it's spot removal and incredibly efficient. Verse Rift. I think it's probably the closest thing to a bubble card in the design. It does damage early and armor early, so it can help you with early board control, which is, I think, why he put it in the deck. And it's a very, very potent finisher late game, particularly after you've obviously played Odin, because Verse Rift deals insane damage. The second one, the finale one, does 12 for 1 mana. And you can almost always just outrun someone trying to kill you. So I think that's why it's in the deck. It's certainly very flexible, but it's, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this deck tech and then make a second video of games, as per Desi's suggestion, since it is going to be a long video. I'm on the bubble about this card, honestly. Sometimes you draw it in mid-game and it is just utter chaff in your hand that you ultimately burn because you're getting close to max hand size. So I don't really know about Verse Rift, honestly. I think it's decent. It's decent. It's definitely not mandatory. Astalor Bloodsworn, this is one of those must-craft legendaries. It kind of feels like it goes in every deck because it's so flexible. The flexibility is just insane, and it's really strong in this deck because the 5-drop, when you cast it on 8 mana and you've played Odin, is like play a 5/5, gain 5, deal 5 for 5 mana. That's fucking insane. Like totally ridiculous ability. And kind of, well, I'll get to it more later, but a lot of the strategy of this deck is basically just figuring out how to get to Odin. Odin is how you win. Odin is the finisher. It's like the Mirror Universe or the Sarah in this deck. Astalor's amazing. I've had some opponents recently play this against me and they've dropped it early. Like playing it as a 2-drop, playing it as a 5-drop. And then it's kind of just hanging out in their hand. And it's an interesting strategy. It's something I haven't really done much. But in retrospect, it has clogged my hand in a lot of games where I haven't wanted to play the 5-mana version of it in order to get up to the 8. I just haven't had the tempo to do it by mid-game. And I just can't find a window to drop the 5-drop. But if I played the 5-drop at 5 instead of trying to hold it till 8 to get the armor, I might have been able to just scale right into 10 and play it on 10, or play it once I am on 10. And just blow the shit out of them. And I don't think I'm doing that enough. So I think that's actually a skill that guy implemented against me that I'm going to implement going forward. Just getting a sense of how the game is going and maybe playing Astalor at 5 just to get it ramped up. Bash, insane card. I think this used to cost 3 mana, so they actually buffed it. For years, I think it was 3 mana, and then they buffed it to 2. And at 2 mana, deal 3, gain 3 armor, that is totally insane removal. Like compared to other removal in the format, like a 2 mana deal 3, a lightning bolt or a 2 mana incinerate was like kind of the baseline for good removal. And this thing has add 3 armor, which is just nuts because you have so many ways to leverage armor in the deck. And of course you have Odin, which means if you have Bash going after Odin, that's deal 6 for 2 mana or kill a creature and deal 3. It's really good. Bladestorm is so good. This card is like, I don't know, it kind of feels like the strip mine of the format. It's like this really, really interesting effect that you can figure out the math on the board very quickly. It rewards you for thinking fast because you can sometimes sculpt these insane situations where you like chip this thing, damage this thing, Bladestorm away the whole board and kill everything. It's beautiful, elegant design, although sometimes it backfires. In fact, Desi, I'm sure, can relay that a little earlier. I tried to be too smart with Bladestorm and I forgot to attack before I cast it with my last thing. I figured it out, but I fucked it up.
By too smart, he means not having a kindergarten level of math experience.
It was very complicated. It involved a bunch of different sized minions, 2 of them with 9 health, 1 with 7, a 3/3, and a few other random odds and ends. And I had Trial by Fire and Bladestorm, and I had a way probably in there to figure out how to chip things exactly right. But it's hard from the brain standpoint because the minions get bigger. The Trial by Fire minions get larger. So you deal 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5. So it's 15 damage spread across 5 different packets. But that affects what you attack so that they all line up exactly with the same health so you can press the Bladestorm button and clear the board, which I needed to do to avoid dying. And I failed because of what my kindergarten level of intelligence is.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go, guys.
Oh yeah, and there was also one other example where there was a, I think like a 6/6 or something, a 2/3, a 2/3, and a 2/2.
Oh Jesus, I did something horrible. Yes,
Yeah.
I got tunnel vision and I just Bladestormed right away.
And you Bladestormed with 2/2 and killed those. And there was like
killed nothing.
And there was a 6/6 with taunt.
Blocking me from basically hitting the guy in the face for 11.
And so instead of trying to kill that, he killed a 2/2 hyena.
Okay, I may in fact be a little high. And when you're high, it's harder to calculate Bladestorm math, slightly. It's one of the things that actually degrades. Many other things go up in capability, and some things go down, and Bladestorm definitely goes down. Moving on, Shield Block. Fucking awesome card, but I generally don't cast it early. I don't cast it early because I kind of want to figure out the tempo of the game first to feel like, am I under threat early? Do I need the armor? And where I can ignore my opponent's attacks in the middle of the game to do things like forging and developing? Or do I need to cycle it immediately in order to get to Odin because the guy's eating my deck up with plagues or something? And obviously Shield Block is insane later on in the game. It becomes one of the most powerful cards ever printed when Odin's in play, or after you've cast Odin, because it's 2 mana, deal 5 damage, gain 5 life, draw a card. That is, what do you think about that card? Should they print that? 2 mana, deal 5, draw a card, gain 5. Gain 5 armor. No, not fair. Not a fair card. Stone Skin Armor. This guy was buffed too. I think it was originally 3 mana or something, or there's something about it that was different. I think it was bigger. Maybe it cost, I think it cost 4, honestly, in retrospect. And then they made it cost 2. Dude, it's 2 mana, draw 2 for 2. That's insanity. What the fuck, Armor? Ridiculous power level. Imagine this card in Magic. And because you have the ability to voluntarily change your armor a million different ways, Stone Skin it's insanely easy to activate and is really, really potent card draw. Kind of right when you want it in the mid-game. It's an amazing card. Bellowing Flames. This is the early removal spell that you will lean on heavily. Against aggro decks, when you encounter decks that you know to be aggro like Rogue and Paladin, Bellowing Flames will be your safety net, honestly. It's almost impossible for those decks to come back when you Bellowing Flames them early. You clear their whole board away for 3 mana, and then they're spending 2 more turns developing while you're ramping up into the Sanitize and Trial by Fire area, and it just blows out their entire mid-game. They have no way to maintain tempo. If you have a choice between armoring on turn 2 and forging Bellowing Flames, forge the Bellowing Flames. You will never regret it. It doesn't matter what the strategy is. In fact, forging over armoring up early is like almost 100% of the time correct. But get a read on it, because sometimes some decks Sanitize isn't good against, like Mage, for example. Mage and, what's the all-spell deck? Oh yeah, that fucking Plague deck. The Death Knight Plague deck. Sanitize sucks against that deck usually too. So, yeah, be aware of forging. Against like a Plague deck, I probably would not forge Sanitize on turn 2. I would probably just armor up, because you're going to be in for a long ride if you don't get to Odin. They're definitely going to grind you out and probably beat you. Heavy Plate. Such an awesome design too. I love the modality of this card, particularly in a deck with Odin again, because once you get Odin in play, it's 3 mana, gain 8, deal 8 to anything. Well, generally to their face, almost always to their face, because you're finishing the game. Heavy plate is disgusting, and if you get a Wind Fury weapon out of Ignis, then you can like heavy plate and hit them for like 40 in one turn. I think I did like 48 to a priest in one turn once, kid, using heavy plate, shield block, double riff. Bam, bam. The guy's like sitting there at 48, thinking he's gonna win.
Yeah.
And I fucking did like 48 to him in one turn. Yeah, that's how explosive the damage can be in this deck, and it does it so easily. It doesn't require anything complicated. You're just like, okay, I got a Wind Fury weapon on Ignis. We're gonna play to that now. Oh, there's Odin. Okay, keep killing shit, kill shit, kill shit. Odin comes down, kill shit. Weapon comes down, smash, smash. Oh, you couldn't deal with it? Okay, take 1,000. That's kind of how it plays out. The reason I'm so gleeful is because it's a gleeful experience to do that. Rust-Rot Viper, I already discussed him. Ignis is everywhere in the format. There's lots of other weapons. The Mage decks run them. The Warlock decks run them. Rogue has a couple I think I've seen. Hunter has some weapons too. They get them off of the Wild Seeds. And they also run the bow. So way more than enough utility to merit the slot. Honestly, I wonder what... I might actually swap out Expert for a second Viper. That actually, now that I mention it, that might make sense. I do like Weapons Expert a lot, but I'm finding a lot of weapons all the time, and I'm suffering and struggling in games because I can't get rid of a weapon a lot of the time. And when you crush a weapon immediately with a Viper, the tempo swing is insane. You really feel it. I've had it happen to me many times. Steam Guardian, absolutely love this creature. It's often worth dropping on turn 2 with a coin just for tempo, and if you already have a fire spell in your hand, look out for that, because reducing the cost of Trial by Fire and getting it down to 5 totally changes how the game can play out, because you have complete tempo and board control established on turn earlier, which can be very decisive. Even though you are coining it out one turn earlier, you have better information, and you have a Steam Garden in play, and you have control over the early game, and that's really all that matters. Again, all you're doing is getting to Mirror Universe. So Weapons Expert I have in the deck. Like him, sometimes hate him a fair amount of the time. I've drawn him a lot of the times when I've already drawn both of these things. And he does fuck all, and that reason enough might be that, you know what, I'm out. He's out of here. All right, if you're going to build this deck, Brian Weissman's first Hearthstone Magic recommendation, or Hearthstone, yeah, from Magic recommendation, you probably want, where are you, my boy? See if you spot him, Desi. There he is. Wait, do we have a golden one? No, I only have one regular one. This is like a free-to-play game deck. Rust-Rot Viper. You probably want 2 of these things. They're just too insane. And it's constant card draw also. Obviously, sometimes you reshuffle the Vipers, but the extra card draw can actually speed you to Odin, too. Does that actually... Let me think about that. Does reshuffling a Viper... Yeah, if you can't draw the Viper that you reshuffled immediately, and I don't believe you can, every time you cycle a Rust-Rot Viper, you actually get closer to drawing Odin, very slightly. It does increase the odds slightly, because for 1 second before the Viper goes into the deck, there's 1 fewer card, so your chances of drawing Odin go up. So cycling Viper over and over and over again over thousands of games will draw you Odin more often than not, which is kind of awesome, assuming that the trade thing works the way I just described. All right, this is probably my favorite card in the whole deck. Craftsman's Hammer. I was just telling Desi this card is like Ancestral Recall in the deck. It is so insanely powerful. It's kind of the workhorse of the deck. When you can play Hammer on turn 3 or turn 4, you just control the tempo because of the way that it gives you all this extra armor. And you can use that armor to sanitize and shield slam. I do it constantly. It also, the other thing it does is turns these guys on. When you attack with the hammer, you can play the Stoneskin armor in without having to armor up for tempo reasons. So you get this free activation of Stoneskin armor as a consequence of attacking. The tempo is insane, and will often allow you to just play the Stoneskin armors almost perfectly on curve and continue to develop and just stay ahead of the opponent the entire game. Love this card. Absolutely love it. It's so awesome. And I love the design as well, and it just slots perfectly into Control Warrior. Ignis the Eternal Flame. This guy's one of the most powerful cards in all of Standard, I guess. It's obvious for that reason. There's tons and tons of Forge cards that are all amazing. They're all platinum, S-tier level cards. And Ignis allows you to craft a custom weapon, which is almost always a 10-drop. I think that there's a few times when getting the 5-drop makes sense, and you got to pay attention to your hand. If your hand is a bunch of extremely narrow stuff. If it's real or it's really expensive stuff, but they're like it can't really be that much expensive stuff because it's going to be one turn or two turns past him, and only one turn past the weapon. Trial by Fire just kind of stands up and controls all the early game that the 5-drop weapon would be good in. So unless something has really, really, really gone wrong, you're just getting a 10 every time, even when you play this guy on 4. I think I've gotten a 5-mana weapon maybe 2 or 3 times, and I've gotten the 10 drop like 150 or 200 times or something. Without any exception at all, the best skill you want on that weapon is Wind Fury. It's totally broken on a weapon of that size with the abilities that it has. And if you get Wind Fury, it's like Time Walk every turn because you're doing something so impactful with the secondary ability, like gaining 8 armor or putting an 8/8 creature into play every single turn, that being able to do that twice is ridiculous power level. Like 10 mana, deal 10 damage per turn, summon 2 8/8s, or gain 16 armor. It's totally unbeatable. Like I've had a priest beat me because he just fucking played a Wind Fury gain 8 weapon. And he just ground me down with it. He gained like 60 armor from it and I couldn't kill him. So it's just an insane effect. The 10 drop weapon you always get Wind Fury, and then you pick either one of the other 2 abilities. Either summon an 8/8 or gain 8 armor. After that, it's like Battle Cry 6. Second best ability is probably Lifesteal. I've never, I think, gotten Poisonous ever. It's totally useless. And Immune when attacking, totally useless. And adjacent enemies, almost always useless. It's just take the ones that are actually good. Brawl. I kind of have a total love-hate relationship with this card because I've been playing Hearthstone for like 11 or 12 years. In the background, I've lost so many games to it. It's just so mindless and stupid. I hate the design, honestly. I really hate the design of Brawl. I hate a game that absolutely punishes you in a totally random way for doing what the game asks you to do, which is to play lots of minions. It just feels like a very unfair clear because sometimes like it leaves their guy up. They've got like 2 guys in play and you have 7 and you have board dominance and a brawl and their fucking biggest guy survives and all your guys die. It feels so bullshit. It's such a feel bad card for both players who play it and for players who play against it. It just feels like bad design to me, but it's powerful as hell. It's an insanely good card, and one of them is about correct. You do not want 2 because there's a lot of games where Brawl does nothing. It's kind of like that thing you keep in your back pocket when everything else has gone horribly wrong. Like you miscalculated your Blade Storm. Not like that would ever happen.
No.
You miscalculated your Blade Storm, and all the creatures are still in play, but you still have 5 mana. And you cast Brawl, and like one of their shitty creatures is left, and you kill like 60 power worth of guys, and you're okay. That's kind of what it's in the deck for. It's a panic button. It's like a Nivenral's disc. Sanitize, this is like another backbone of the deck. It's board clear and gain 3 armor also. Totally insane. Like one of the most powerful removal sweepers ever printed in the format, or I'm sorry, in this game's history. And it was actually nerfed from 4 to 5. I do have to wonder how the playtesters allowed this card to be only cost 4. Because even at 5, it's god tier. At 4, it's like one of the most insane cards ever printed in the history of the game. And the way that it meshes in Control Warrior cannot be exaggerated. It's just like, it allows you to win games that seem almost totally unwinnable. But then you realize, oh, wait a minute, I got a shield block. So I'll shield block, and I'll armor up, and I'll attack with the weapon, and I'll fucking Forge Sanitize and clear away like impossible board full of 18 giants or whatever. Like it does happen. The card just does totally insane, unreal things. And it gives you enough tempo that you can just cast it on turn 5 also if you've armored up a few times or if you've cast a heavy plate or a shield block or something on the way up to 5. Insane card, one of the best cards in the deck. Trial by Fire, also in that same category. I just don't even know how they made this card. It's like, it's got to be the most powerful removal spell ever printed because it not only kills your opponent's entire board, but it often leaves you with 2 4/4s, and it only costs 6. So you just like tempo out their entire early game with Trial by Fire, and at the end of it, you have 2 giant monsters in play that they have to deal with now. Either take 8 to the face from, or they have to expend their entire next turn dealing with the last turn's clearer. How nuts is that? And it only costs 6. Just keep in mind that it's 15 damage aggregate, and you can move it around in creative ways to make sure that everything dies exactly the right way and that you're left with the only thing on the battlefield. And now we come to Odin, Prime Designate. Did I do my Odin voice pretty well? Is that Odin-y enough?
I don't know.
Is that cringe?
A little.
A little cringe, all right. Well, the audience can decide if it's cringe or not.
Okay.
It's obviously his voice, man. Look at that dude. Odin, Prime Designate.
That was better.
Thank you. And he sits there on his fucking throne and he points his finger at you and he says, "You are a dead man because you let this control warrior get to 8. And from this point on, you are mega fucked because when you play Odin, most of the time the person is utterly dead. They may not realize it yet and they may scramble and try to heal themselves and add armor, but they're dead. The clock is ticking. It's kind of like the Sarah Angel has come down and you have no cards left in your hand and there's a tome and a library in play on the other side of the table. Like, you've still got 3 Psyblasts left in your deck. You even have 1 Swords Plowshares and you have 2 Cern de Befrites left, but you're dead. You're really actually dead. It doesn't really matter what you draw. And Odin is that in this deck. I think I can count on one hand the amount of games I've lost after I played Odin. It's really that insane. You just play it. Every now and then they get like some crazy one-hit, one-shot you from like 38 life where they put together some weird combo. It almost always happens in Mage, actually, because Mage has that Sif card, that ridiculous Sif card where they spend the whole game just discovering cards and removing your stuff, and then eventually they go Sif, copy it, take 50, and you can't do anything about it. You can't even interact, which is, again, like ridiculous design. But in the case of Odin, it's normally when you play it, unless the opponent has exactly the right stuff going on or the stone cold nuts right afterward, you almost always win. The only way that I ever draw Odin and don't win is a game where my opponent is just pressuring me the whole time and I can never drop it. I just can't afford to play an 8-drop because like every turn the board has something insane on it that I can't deal with.
Yeah, and it's like the perfect backbone of this deck because it turns a deck that's mainly defense without it into like deadly offense.
Pure offense.
Continuing to remain defense.
Exactly. It turns all of the defensive cards like Shield Block and Heavy Plate and Sanitize. It turns them into insane lethal weapons. Bash does 6 damage when Odin has been cast. Verse Rift, that second Verse Rift can deal 12, as I said before. It's like all the cards in the deck become completely ridiculous, like the most powerful Hearthstone cards ever printed, and all you have to do is get to 8 to cast Odin. Successfully not die the following turn, and then if you can cast Odin, not die the following turn, or within usually 1 to 2 turns after that, you almost always will win. So that's the goal. It's really simple. Just watch your lands come into play while you kill all their shit, and you survive, and you draw cards, and you just keep the board under control, and you just build tempo, you build armor, you move through the mid to late game. At some point in there, you usually play Ignis and get ready with your 10-mana weapons. Sometime either early or late, you'll draw Odin. And if they don't dirty rat it out of your hand or screw it out of your hand some other way, and there's a couple other ways they can make you discard it, you play Odin on 8 and you win. It's one of the simplest and most effective decks I think ever constructed in all of Hearthstone. It's certainly the easiest, most, I would say, non-intuitive, simple, powerful decks that's S-tier clear that I've ever played. And it's been a blast to play it for the last couple of months. And if I had not realized that Legend actually resets, or the March to Legend resets every single month, I would have certainly got to Legend last season. I got to 2 Diamond, right? I was like 2 Diamond with 1 star. I needed like 5 or 6 more wins, and I was winning like 80 to 85% of the time at least. I almost never lost, honestly, with the deck. It was shocking to me when I lost. Although I did discover something interesting, that you lose way more at Silver than you do around around Legend, because all the sweaty players who haven't made Legend before are all grinding trying to get to Legend, and they're not as good as the guys that have been Legend like 18 times in the past, and those guys are all just chilling and doing their quests at Silver and stuff.
Although if you don't fuck up your Blade Storm math half the time,
that would be better. All right.
Then it'll be pretty easy to clear the board consistently almost every turn, so that you can get up to 8 mana and play Odin and then basically win.
It would be, yes. Okay, so I'm going to actually end this video because I've talked for forever. I don't know. It's been like 30 minutes. But I thought I'd make a cool introductory video for my intention of doing some Hearthstone videos with my son Desi here also alongside me. The next video will be, I'm going to be recording in real time because there's no archiving in this. But honestly, it's way easier to play a game of Hearthstone and narrate it in an entertaining way while playing it than it is to do a complex game of Commander. Because to play Commander well, you really do have to think. You really have to use a lot of your mind. It's not remedial at all. So it degrades my ability to do commentary in a way that sounds entertaining and fun. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it. I would love to hear in your comments what you think, whether or not I should make some Hearthstone videos. Do any of you guys even care about this game? I don't know. I didn't care about it for a long time. I certainly have watched my fair share of Hearthstone videos, but I would not have gone out of my way to watch them. I kind of just watched them here and there, and mostly just, crypt videos, and some of those videos in the past, Kriparian videos. Also, I guess, I watched a lot of Battlegrounds. Mainly Sunbake and Relaxer, who's my favorite My favorite Battlegrounds streamer, mainly because he's the one who's the least obnoxious. The least obnoxious and arrogant. He's actually quite a humble guy, fun and entertaining to watch. Sun Bacon Relaxer, if you're a Battlegrounds fan. He has a Twitch stream that gets, I think, about 1,500 to 2,000 people per stream. His name is Victor, and he's definitely one of the best players, but the thing that sets him apart, in my opinion, is that he's not unbearable. Hearthstone videos to come, I promise. Stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching.